figures of speech, the very basic figures of speech, and I'm going to show you how to apply the explanation of the figure of speech to the line in the poem. I very often see students in the line, when they have a line and they have to identify the figure of speech, they write the name of the figure of speech and they write the definition. They don't apply it to the line. Today I'm going to teach you that. So the 5 figures of speech that I'm going to do with you are simile, metaphor, alliteration, repetition, and onomatopoeia. A figure of speech is a poetic device that a poet uses in a poem. And so let's go on to the first figure of speech, which is a simile. Now in a simile, you will find that there are 3 things that you need to pick out. And the 3 things are, there are 2 different objects. There is a commonality between those 2 objects, so there is a common quality, and the word like and as makes it a direct comparison. Let's do the first example of the simile. So if I say she is as fat as a pumpkin, the 2 different objects are she and pumpkin. The commonality or the common quality is fat, and like and as is used to make it a direct comparison. And so if I'm applying it to the line, this is what I would write. Simile, 2 different objects in single inverted commas, she and pumpkin, have one common quality, fat. The word as is used to make it a direct comparison. Let's do another one. He is tall like a mountain. So you will be able to pick out the 2 different objects, definitely. So we have on one side he, we have on the other side mountain. The commonality or the common quality is they are tall. And the word like is used to make it a direct comparison. Very well done. Let's do the second figure of speech. The second figure of speech is a metaphor, and students find a metaphor a little difficult to identify. And the reason why they find it difficult to identify it is because a metaphor doesn't use the words like and as. When you see like or as, it's very easy to identify that it's a simile, but metaphor doesn't have those words. And so it is an implied comparison, an indirect comparison. Now what is there in a metaphor? Yes, there is first of all 2 different objects, and second of all, a common quality. But there is no like and as, so it is an indirect comparison. Let me tell you that there is one way you can check whether it is a metaphor. You try to put like in the line, and if you are able to put it, it's easier for you to identify. So we'll do it in the lines that I'm choosing out of the poems that I have taken. The first one, Richard was a lion in the fight. So you have 2 different objects, Richard and lion. Their commonality is fight, or the way they fought, and there is no like or as. But let's check. Richard was like a lion in the fight. Oh, I can put that. That's a metaphor. Let me do a second one. In the 10th standard book, you have all the world's a stage. That's a metaphor. So what are the 2 different objects? the world and stage. Now if you look in this line, the commonality is implied. In the world we have people, and in the stage we have actors. So there are two different objects, world and stage. The commonality is the actors or the players of the play. Let's see if we can put like in this. All the world is like a stage. There you go. So we have metaphor. Now let me explain to you the difference between the simile and the metaphor. Having taught you the simile and having taught you the metaphor, the difference is, in simile you will be able to see the word like and as. In metaphor you will not be able to see the word like and as. In simile it is a direct comparison. In metaphor it is an indirect or an implied comparison. The other commonalities between the two are, simile has two different objects. Metaphor also has two different objects. The other thing that they have in common is a simile has a common quality. A metaphor also has a common quality which may be implied, like in the case of All the World's a Stage. So if you're able to understand the commonalities as well as differences between simile and metaphor, you will be able to identify a metaphor. The third figure of speech that we're going to do is alliteration. And alliteration is when the starting letter or the starting sound of consecutive, that means consecutive means words that are following one another. So when the starting letter or the starting sound of consecutive words is the same. A very common one is Betty bought some bitter butter. You can hear over there, Betty bought some bitter butter. So the starting letter B is repeated for greater poetic effect. Or you can have, the boat banged with a shivering shock. This is in the poem Inchcape Rock. The boat banged. There's a double B over there. With a shivering shock. Now in the second part, it is a sound. It is not the letter S, but it is the sound SH. So the starting letters B in boat banged and the starting sound SH in shivering shock are repeated for greater poetic effect. The fourth one is repetition. There is a commonality between alliteration and repetition. In alliteration, we have the starting letter that is repeated, but in repetition, we have a whole word that is repeated. And so you have, it's apples we want and apples we'll have. Look at this line in the poem. If you look at this line in the poem, apples is repeated for greater poetic effect. He walked for hours and hours. In this line, hours is repeated for greater poetic effect. And the fifth one is onomatopoeia. Onomatopoeia is when there is a particular word that denotes the sound of something. So, for example, if I give you my first line of the poem, pitter patter falls the rain on the schoolroom window pane. Pitter patter falls the rain. The words pitter patter denotes the sound of the falling rain. Or in the Inchcape Rock you have, down sank the bell with a gurgling sound. So gurgling is a sound when you put water in your throat and you try to gargle, and you can sometimes play with that water. So the word gurgling denotes the sound of the bell. No. When we ring a bell, it makes ting ting. Gurgling denotes the sound of the sinking bell. So be careful how you explain the figure of speech. Apply the figure of speech to the line. I hope I made it clear to you the first 5 figures of speech. I will go on to do the next 5 in the following videos. Do stay in touch. If you've enjoyed this video, do not forget to subscribe, like and share. Leave a comment if there's a question that you have with regards to the figure of speech that I have taught. I would love to hear from you, because your struggles, if I can make a little easier, I would love to do it. This is Teacher Grandma, a teacher for 34 years, a grandmother of 2 pretty little girls, hoping that I have made figures of speech, the poetic device used in poems, a little more understandable for you. Bye-bye.